What is up, everyone? Dan the Card Man back again. Welcome to another weekly news video. To all of you based in the US, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a good weekend. Let's get cracking into this week's news video because there's a few things we want to chat through. Now, the first of which is probably one of the more interesting ones for this week, and that is, a bunch of cards that PSA have lost with regards to something that a customer submitted to them. So this was flagged to me through Retro Hoops. He tagged me in it on Twitter, but essentially, as you can see here, this person has said, basically, they were looking for help for a number of weeks. There's been a follow-up post since this one. As you can see, it's from the 5th of November. They were still chasing these cards as of the 23rd of November. It's the last update that I have. But essentially, they put in a 77 card order. 18 cards arrived. 1 box arrived. 59 were missing. To give you a bit more detail, it's pretty interesting because if you look at the invoice that this individual, tagged as part of their post, it does count that 77 cards, were on the checklist that these people fill out as the cards get distributed back to the customer. So it looks like, the cards were graded, paid for, so on and so forth, packed for shipping, and then for whatever reason, 59 of the cards didn't go to this customer. Now, that's not news, right? Or it's nothing new, right? Because if you look at some of the things we've spoken about on the channel in the past, PSA made this mistake numerous times. So I'm not overly surprised it has occurred. What is really good for this individual is that Nat Turner, is looking into it. I'm not sure on where things are at right now. I'd imagine you're probably going to see a delay given it is the Thanksgiving weekend, but still not a good look. Only 1 box arrived. Very, very strange. So sort of when you see stuff like this, or if you have it happen to yourself, make sure you're putting the pressure on these people via social media, right? So many people would see this and not call anything out. They try and contact customer support, which is obviously the thing you should be doing. But if you're not talking about it on social media, right? You're not talking about it or trying to raise it with people on certain platforms, you might not get something expedited. The fact that this person has made this post, and it's obviously been 3 weeks by the time Nat Turner saw it. As you can see, original post November 5th, Nat Turner's replied on the 24th, right? Nat may have replied, PSA may have replied a bit earlier, but the fact that this was posted on social media has now given the CEO's eyes on it, and that's a good thing, right? So again, pretty poor mistake from PSA. Nothing new, right? And it's very disappointing to see that this kind of stuff continues to happen. We're not really sure where things they get lost. Did PSA forget to mail it? Did the mailman steal it? I just think it was maybe not shipped to the right person, or maybe it's still stuck in their, output or whatever you want to call it, their delivery team. The people that mail out the stuff is what I'm trying to allude to now. My brain's not working right now. I'm still a little bit sick, but you guys get the point. I think it's, really poor form. We've seen this mistake, at least 3 or 4 times that I can recall in the last 12 months. One positive would be at least this person got some of his cards. We've seen other instances where they've literally got 2 customers mixed up and mixed the cards up and sent the people the wrong cards. Again, not a good look, especially when the person has spent, the kind of money or, the declared value for some of these cards, like $200 for a card. A lot of this stuff is, older Topps material. So some of this stuff maybe not as common as it would be for a modern card, right? So again, irrespective of what the card is, you can't be having these kinds of errors. So stay tuned. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. This is another, the image I just wanted to say where, again, this person has clarified, well, they very clearly checked out that, you had 77 cards. This is their sign off, where's the rest of them? So let's stay tuned to see what happens next. Now, the next point I want to touch on is this post from Cardporn regarding Dwayne Johnson's rookie card, the Bumblebee, NFL card that he had, or not NFL card. I think it's the Canadian Football League. I think he played for. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're basically talking about how this card, about a year ago, I think it was sold for 45 grand. It's now worth 9.5, and on Probstein, so it's probably got some shill bids behind that based on, things we do see. I think the key message I want to give you here is, when you're looking at purchasing cards of this value, obviously people buy into the hype irrespective of whether people say don't buy into the hype, so on and so forth, but there are ways you can sort of protect yourself. And one of the things I've spoken about on the channel in the past with regards to stuff that I buy is that, if I spend, $1,000 on a card, which I rarely do, but let's say I do, what I often do in that instance to try and take away the guilt or the risk from spending that kind of money on a card, right? Because it's just a piece of cardboard at the end of the day. The way I try and mitigate some of that risk is, I'll say, okay, let's buy that card, but I'll buy maybe 5 or 6 other cards as well. So I spend a little bit more money, but those 5 or 6 other cards I do intend, to sell to then try and make my initial purchase basically being a $0 cost base. And something like this would, again, yes, it is hard to sell $9,000 worth of extra cards, but that's the kind of thing that I would be doing in this instance. And that's my message to you. You yourself are maybe not spending this kind of money on cards, but even then, just take it a bit slower. Don't rush into things. And obviously we're entering a period now within the hobby where prices continue to come down. Some things have stabilized, but still, inflation keeps going the way it does. If we do end up being in a proper recession, so on and so forth, you need to be very careful with how you're spending your money, and cards at the end of the day are not going to put food on the table. So like I said, the way I sort of protect myself in that instance is, I'll buy things, sell things to fund the things I want to keep, right? I've got some stuff here, not a whole lot. There's like it's a pretty cool one I picked up the other day. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's a Walt Frazier, one from Dominion on card auto. That card was quite cheap. I actually got it very, very cheap. I think it cost me like $100 Australian, $60 US. And these cards probably worth, 5-6 times that. But essentially what I did, made this purchase only $100 Australian. I bought a couple of other cards that I'm going to sell. So now that card cost me, $0. So the exciting thing with that is, or the good thing about that is if the market keeps going the way it does, or the recession hits a bit harder, inflation hits a bit harder, the interest rate environment gets a little bit worse, I can sell that card and not be too concerned about making a loss, right? If I bought that card for $100, even though I got it undervalued, but let's say it is worth $100, and I need to sell it to pay bills or something along those lines in the middle of a recession, I can now comfortably sell that card for a big loss if I need to, because I've already recouped, my cost up front. It cost me $0 technically, right? And that's how I approach all my collecting. Most of this stuff you can see here behind me has been done, in that same fashion. I buy things to sell to fund my collection. I've said it before on the channel, so maybe some of you guys may not have heard it, but I come from quite a poor family. So when I do now in a position, or when I am now in a position, I should say, to buy some of this stuff and buy cool shit, I still feel guilty about buying it, even though I can afford it. It makes me feel a lot more comfortable having this sort of stuff in my collection, knowing that it's like a $0 cost base. It hasn't really cost me anything. Yes, if I sell it, I'll have more money, but I like to have cool shit. So that helps me, get comfortable owning this sort of stuff, especially now that I've got a daughter to try and look after as well. So I know I went on a bit of a ramble there, but keen to get your thoughts on whether you apply something very similar for your collection or whether you do something different. But, when you see stuff like this, where you've got a card that was very clearly pumped by influencers like Timberland and a few others, and it was selling for like $45,000. Some PSA 10 copies sold for 90 grand, 100 grand, if I remember correctly. Now it's worth 9 grand. That's a big loss, right? So sort of protect yourself by, number one, not buying into this hype, but number two, approach your collecting in unique ways. Don't have to run out and buy everything up front. You can take it slow. You can sell things to fund your collection. You can still get really high-end cards in your PC without actually spending too much money. So, I can talk about that in another video if you guys are keen, but that's essentially where I was going. Now, the next thing I want to talk to is this post from Cardporn today. Now, I wasn't going to talk about this because it doesn't really fit into, card collecting, but I want to highlight it because, again, it goes to, some of the messaging that people are portraying within the hobby and why you sort of need to, make up your own mind. I say this all the time, but when you've got stuff like this, Cardporn have 75,000 followers, okay? When they put out posts like this and they sort of, either pot calling the kettle black once again, as I've said about them in the past, just make sure you're aware of who's giving you information and what their ulterior motives are and whether or not you should be taking everything they say as gospel. So if you haven't seen this, essentially they made a post today talking about Sports Card Investor and how all of a sudden their account has what appears to be a bunch of bots. Now, the information in this post is once again very, very snarky from Cardporn. It goes to some of the things they've done lately, right? This is not like OG Cardporn. It comes across very wanky in my opinion, but hey, they can do whatever they want. It's their account. But the reason I wanted to flag this, even though I said I wouldn't talk about it, is because it's very odd that you've got Cardporn, okay? So if you go to Sports Card Investors page and you click on their followers, you can see, I can see all their followers, right? They've got 100,000. Now, if you do the same thing to Cardporn, okay, this is going to be the point I'm going to get to in a second. So if we click into Cardporn once it loads, if it wants to load, apologies. I'm already on the page, that's why it's not loading, sorry guys. So if you click into the followers, you can see here, only Cardporn can see all followers, right? So if Cardporn want to sit there, and this is what I said about the pot calling the kettle black, and they want to have a go, at Sports Card Investor around having bots, why is Cardporn not allowing us to see all their followers? And that's why it comes back to what I said. Be very careful who you're sort of taking information from. These people that they say things, they stir the pot, but hang on, like if I'm going to do that, like I do on my channel, like come at me for the same sort of shit, right? I'm not going to say something and then protect myself from being called out, right? It's a bit rich, like I've said before about them in the past, to hide your followers, but then call out Sports Card Investor, especially what we do know about, Instagram these days, where irrespective of whether you buy them or not, you're going to get bots following your account. I only have like 800 followers or whatever it is, 700 on Instagram, and I have bots following me all the time. I block them, they leave crappy posts all the time. It's really hard to avoid, especially as you get more and more of a following, right? As you get bigger, more and more bots start following you as well. So it may not be intentional, but irrespective of that, like I said, it's Cardporn. If you want to call out someone for their followers, make yours at least private or public, I should say, because, as I said in my post down here, very, very comfortable in saying that if yours was public, you'd see a shit ton of bots following you as well, right? And that's not surprising. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe Jeff Wilson did buy bots, right? He says here he didn't, but maybe he did. So maybe you are right, Cardporn. But at the same time, if you want to call someone out for that kind of crap, you need to show us yours as well, because Instagram is just full of bots these days. It's ridiculous. Now, the last thing I do want to talk to today is COMC. So I'm sure most of you guys are using this. If you're not, now is a really, really good weekend for you to do it, between November 24th and 28th. Essentially, you get free shipping if you have 20 or more cards. I think there's a bonus thing if you have 100 or more cards as well. But also that you get 5% store credit with every single purchase that you make within those 4-day period, up to, I think it's like $100 per user. So that's pretty cool. That cash back gets put into your account on January 1st next year. But again, this goes through from, Thanksgiving Friday or Thursday, whenever it was, up until, Cyber Monday. So I think it's worth checking out if you haven't already. It worked out pretty well for me because I've got a bunch of cards in my COMC account. So the fact that now I get free shipping on those is a huge win for me. If you're not using it, I think you're a bit silly, because COMC, I'm only recently new to it. I've only been using it in the last month or so, I want to say. I've always avoided it. I don't know why. I always heard they had really bad shipping delays. Turns out that's not the case anymore. But, I've made so many deals in the last 4 weeks. So some of you Americans might say, well, yeah, of course, we all use it here. But some of you overseas guys, if you're not using it, you're literally, shooting yourself in the foot. Similar to Ship My Cards, this, in combined with Ship My Cards, is going to save you a crap ton of money. So I might do something on that a little bit later on, in terms of talking through how I use those two things to sort of fund my collection as well. But, all in all, I think I just want to call that point out, because you get free shipping if you get 20 cards or more. And that's a lot of money, especially once you start picking up some slabs and things like that, and it becomes a bit more bulkier, right? So keep an eye out for that. Let me know your thoughts down. Apologies. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Like I said, I'm still a little bit sick. Sorry, guys. So hope you have a good Thanksgiving weekend. For those of you around the world, not in the US, I hope you're enjoying the FIFA World Cup. Australia play later tonight. So by the time you see this video, the result would have already been known. Hopefully they can get a result, because if not, we're packing our bags early, which would not be overly surprising given, how poorly that team has been set up. Unfortunately, I don't want to talk about it in too much detail, but, the US got a good result today against England. So, stay tuned. Maybe they can make it out of their group. Really enjoying the World Cup. Again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on that as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.